For almost 2,000 years, man has been trying to determine when Christ would return, gather up his followers, and establish his kingdom on earth. It's been almost 2,000 years. It's a lot of time for man to imagine why Christ has not come back already. In their effort, they have come up with various terms like pre, mid, or post, pre-mid or post-tribulation, pre or post-millennial, as to identify when Christ would return and establish his kingdom on earth. Just about 2,000 years ago, Christ was overlooking this spot when he ascended into heaven, telling his disciples that he would return. He gave them a whole series of signs and events that would take place before his return, and he told his disciples to keep watch and be ready so that they would be prepared for what is to come. We're going to examine when Christ said he would return. Now we are going to examine some of the terminology that we use to describe when we believe Christ will return for his followers to establish his kingdom. I'm author and speaker Richard Perry. These are the two books that I have written, and my website, Last Days Mystery, provides a wealth of information on the time of the end and the return of Christ. First, let's talk about the millennium. The millennium is the 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth, as described in Revelation 20. Some believe that Christ will physically, visibly return, gather up his followers, and reign, literally, on earth for 1,000 years. They're premillennialists. Postmillennialists believe that Christ will return after that period of time and gather up his followers. The next period of time we'll discuss is the tribulation. The tribulation is a 7-year period. It would begin with a covenant or a treaty made by the Antichrist. Then, after 3.5 years, he would start to persecute the people of God for what is called the Great Tribulation. People believe that Christ will come back sometime around the Great Tribulation. There's those that believe he will come pre-tribulation, others mid or during the tribulation, and there's some that believe that he will come back after the tribulation and gather up his followers. The Bible, however, only describes one position as to when Christ will return for his followers. One of the clearest statements about the return of Christ for his followers comes from Christ himself, as recorded in Matthew 24:29 through 31. Christ is standing on the Mount of Olives just across from the Temple Mount when he says, "Immediately after the tribulation of those days, they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky." So if he comes immediately after the tribulation, that would be premillennial. And of course, after the tribulation, that indicates that his coming would be post-tribulation. So if we take Christ at his word, he says immediately after the tribulation, which means he would be coming post-tribulation, after the tribulation, and premillennial, before the millennial reign of Christ on earth. This seems like a fairly straightforward and a simple way of looking at the return of Christ. But there's nothing in Scripture that places his return at any other place.